Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast is the football podcast. It's one of the last football podcasts for the season, but not the last football podcast for the season, so don't panic. We're talking the final. Did Nottingham Forest go up, is the question. We've actually got one game to review and two to predict, and it turns out to be an absolute bumper episode. So check that out. While I've got you, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. If you've got a spare minute, please do drop us a review and tell us whether you like the podcast. Right, let's get started. So here we go. This is CookieCast, the football podcast.
Recording in progress.
Paul?
She's not wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to another instalment of your football-based chatter from the CookieCast network. There's only really one place to start, and it's of course the game that we predicted last week, which was indeed the final game of the football season from a English domestic standpoint, at least. So I feel it's time to hand back over to Mr. Cook to introduce the game, and then to hand over to our resident Nottingham Forest expert to talk us through said game.
I'm reliably informed that you will both be sharing the load, but don't want to skip too far ahead.
I may be able to provide a comment or two.
He'll be able to fill in the gaps where I'm blacked out for seconds at a time. Just
the one and only game that was A, predicted, and B, mattered was Huddersfield Town going up against Nottingham Forest. The finals. The promotion in sight. The taste, the tip of the tongue. It was all there, and all that had to happen is in 90 minutes, one team had to win, and the other team had to not win. So, Matthew, take us on a journey through time and space. Firstly, into the past. Secondly, blow by blow. I want every player that touched the ball in sequence. Go.
But not Brennan Johnson, then.
Yeah, so kind of as we alluded to at on the last podcast, I was going, but it wasn't 100% confirmed that I was kind of going. And then by the time Friday rolled around, me and Paul were going. So yeah, we both got tickets. Complimentary tickets in the Club Wembley section, the Forest Club Wembley section.
Paul's so excited he's fallen off his sofa.
Just completely, yeah. That part of it. I mean, very very swanky would be kind of when you walk in there, and it looks kind of nicer than some kind of like food parts of a shopping mall, and kind of very and when it comes to a lot, when you're like, a nice Goose Island hazy pale for less than £7, signing me up for that, considering whatever we had outside of the ground was shocking. And I know this is not the pursuit of happiness kind of thing, but to have a decent pint of beer in a stadium for, I would say, it's probably reasonable, even at not at Wembley, at probably just a standard ground. I was pretty chuffed with that, So yeah, I think it was a it was just tense. I was really tense. I don't think I sat back I didn't get to enjoy the full paddedness of my chair due to not sitting back in my chair. I think for the entire 97 minutes that the game was on. I think if we kind of go through it, I think Forest dominated the first half. For me, I think they kept the ball well. They passed it around nicely, some nice touches, things like that. That thought Huddersfield kind of had a bit of a threat about them, but seemed intent on falling over a lot in the first half, kind of getting the ball in different parts of the thing, and I'll just fall over here, and any slight bit of contact. I would wonder. I mean, I meant to look it up earlier to see what their statistics across the season was for getting penalties and free kicks and stuff like that. How many of those they got through the season, or whether they got VAR in this game. Chuck yourself down like a sack of shit, and you might get something. I'll talk about that later. But in the first half, it seemed to be a lot of Toffolo, Thomas, and Sinani spent a lot of time on the floor. So I thought Forest looked more of a threat. I thought Keenan Davis looked looked sprightly and quite more of a threat than perhaps Surridge had in the previous game. I do know that Sam Surridge missed yesterday's celebrations in Nottingham to go and get his groin sorted out, so he's been like that kind of pressing that whatever injury he's had for the last couple of months was like, right, we need to deal with it straight away. And then 3 minutes before half time, Forest took the lead. So there was a couple of kind of early kind of threats. I think James Garner took a free kick that Yates flicked on, and then if he got like an extra hair on that header, I think it would have gone in. But then similar kind of setup again. I think Paul will confirm that when everyone was shouting shoot, I was like, no, don't shoot. To which then the ball kind of went flying in, and then it's in the goal kind of thing. And after seeing it a few times afterwards, it does turn out that it was an own goal by Colwell, the defender. But I think that was just desperation, because it was that put of the threat of someone being there.
So we're definitely counting it as a Yates goal for the purposes of the podcast, then, yeah.
I've checked on several different official websites. They all say Colwell, so not Ryan Yates. Unfortunately, you won't be shithousing your way to extra points on that one.
Watching along, I had that moment, and I was like, "Get in, it's him!" And then it was like, "Oh, you've just taken that away from me." It's like.
But I think so. Then obviously, second half, kind of Huddersfield kind of came out of themselves a little bit. I think kind of pushed it a little bit more. Seemed a bit more of a threat, but not. It seemed manageable, I think, for Forest. Again, maybe me being biased, but again, as Paul will confirm, I was getting very aggrieved by how far back Forest was sitting. And not just in the last 10 minutes, in the last 20 minutes, they were sitting a long way back. When you've got your defenders on the penalty spot line and your centre mid perhaps on the edge of the 18-yard box and your striker not too far from them, they were just getting really stuck in the box. And obviously that kind of threat started to kind of show the cracks. So kind of first kind of thing that would show is the Jack Colbeck Harry Toffolo, is it? Penalty incident, shall we say. VAR was in use in the Championship playoff final. By the look of it, it was only used once, and it was this incident. I think, kind of in the post-match interviews, Colbeck pretty much admitted that he touched him. I think me looking back on it, and I'm trying to be objective, and I think I'm not always the most biased Forest fan. I think if Toffolo had just gone down instead of swan dived his way down, they might have got the penalty. But I think Colbeck said something about he felt like he initiated the contact. I don't think that's quite right. But I think the way he went down for the penalty was very theatrical. I think if he'd either just stumbled and gone down, or stumbled and not been able to get his shot away, they might have got the penalty on that one. But it was tens all round from the judges, would be my kind of analysis for the way that he went down.
Well, having the benefit of being at home and seeing it over and over and over again whilst VAR were deliberating over it, I did spare a thought for you, Matt, because I thought, oh my God, this is going to be like the worst part of it. And having seen the camera angles at the time, it was very much Colbeck's leg was there, and it was the way that his foot kind of like flopped over it. Like it was almost as if, like, I think he was definitely looking for it, and like you said, the dive was most certainly theatrical, but then his leg kind of was blocking him. And I guess by the rules of VAR, in terms of correcting a clear and obvious error, it's one of them where if he'd have given the penalty, I don't think they'd have overturned it. It was really, really like touch and go, and I think that I wouldn't say Forest were lucky to get by it, because at the end of the day, if it had been given, Jesus, it would have been soft. But you could have seen it being given, I think, in any other circumstance.
I think the thing that went against Huddersfield from what I can remember seeing of the actual incident itself, was actually, if you watch it back, Colbeck goes to plant his foot, or he actually goes to make like a sort of a swing for the ball, and then plants his foot. So it's almost as if he pulls out of the challenge to actually plant his foot, because he thinks if he goes for the ball, he's gonna end up booting the guy and give away a penalty. So that's why he plants his foot, and I think that's where obviously Toffolo then feels the contact against his shin, and that's what in turn sends him to the ground. But like Matt said there, had he have just fallen to the ground after the initial contact, he probably would have got the penalty. But the arching his back as if he's just been shot in the diaphragm or something similar is probably not helping his case. And I do think that is the only reason why the penalty wasn't given, was that he over-exaggerated the dive, and that was obviously the reason why he was given the yellow card for simulation in the first place, and it's also the reason why the penalty wasn't overturned. So I can understand why Huddersfield Town fans are frustrated, but the VAR was in place for the game. They've followed the protocol. I know there's an article out there where someone's saying that they didn't follow the protocol, but I don't see how they cannot have done. It's not as if it's just some random guy who's in a little booth somewhere watching it back. This is like an appointed official that's in charge of all of those decisions. So they obviously know how the protocol works. So like you said, Stu, soft would have been definitely the decision. You can understand it either way, but yeah, soft for me if it would have been given.
And I mean, really, as well, it's a good job that Matt did take you down as a witness, because otherwise he could have would have been. Has Matt been working the VAR this game? Just this game?
I think. Like I said, I'm gonna watch it with Forest tinted glasses, and I haven't watched Huddersfield that much this year, and I meant to try and look up the stats today, but I couldn't find them quickly. They seem to go looking for the fouls, and they seem to go looking for the fouls not just then, but earlier on in the match as well. It seemed to be make the ref make a decision, make him make lots of decisions, make him, if they're going to use VAR, we're going to make them use VAR over and over again. I don't know if that's Bielsa ball, because obviously the Huddersfield guy is obviously from that coaching tree, to use the NFL kind of phrase. It just seemed, taking the match in a whole, and like I said, people can call me a homer if they like, but I think I'm generally pretty fair when these kind of things go on. There wasn't many Forest bodies just flinging themselves to the ground, and I've been the first one to criticise them this season, to say that I don't like the attitude, I don't like the way they harangue the ref at times. They didn't do that in this game. We talk about Ryan Yates being, we know what his nickname is, but I don't think he was particularly like that in the game either. I don't know whether either, we also know that Steve Cooper's dad's involved in the refereeing. So whether he's said to the team, listen, this is this guy's last game as a ref, he definitely doesn't take any crap, so don't give him any crap. Don't take the piss with like diving and chucking yourself to the ground. And he doesn't like that. So whether they've got someone in and said that to the Forest players, and Huddersfield haven't done that and thought we're just going to make him make decisions all match, and then you just get to the point. I think some referees get to the point where it's like, I'm experienced, I've done this for a long time, stop trying to take the mickey out of me. And then at that point it's going to be kind of thing. And I think, like I said, with the Toffolo penalty, I think it's very much, it's like in rugby league or rugby union when they ask the question, is it a try, yes or no? Or can you give me a reason as to not give this try? And it was, can you give me, is that a penalty? Is my decision correct? And they've probably turned around and gone, yeah, he's thrown himself, he looks like, I think there was definitely a look of, right, can I initiate contact because I'm probably not going to get the ball going into the box. There was more defenders there. And then the way he threw himself down was theatrical. And, I think if he would have gone down, normally, as it were, and we'll come to the next one, I think they might have got the penalty, because it probably was a penalty at the end of the day, but they shot themselves in the foot by the way they constructed their match plan, if you want.
We've talked about this sort of privately through the chat before we came on, but generally the ref had a pretty good game, but there was, for me, I said this to you guys, that there was a bit of an air of kind of wanting to keep a lid on the cards. He didn't let any cards go in the first half at all, and there was a couple of challenges in particular the other way, especially Sarr, who we brought in. He'd been out of the Huddersfield team for a little while, but was brought back in for his last contracted game as well at centre half. There was one in the first half, I can't remember who it was, and he absolutely cynically just, I don't know if it was a pullback or he just flattened him. It was just in that position where you thought if he'd have been last man, he'd have been knackered. And I thought, is a yellow card coming here? Nailed on, nothing. Kept it in his pocket. But then I think it set the tone a bit more when the second half came and he decided that he was going to get a few, because Zinchenko got booked as well for Forest, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then obviously Toffolo got booked for diving, which in hindsight now, had he have issued a card in the first half for the same offence, just not necessarily in the box, it might not have come to that.
I think there was when I watched the highlights, I think it was Toffolo again gets the ball right down in the Forest court, right back corner, and he just chucks himself to the ground. Like, he just waits for Spence breathes on him, and then next thing he's on the floor, and you're like, no, you can't kind of, that's not going to wash. So then, obviously, not long after that, O'Brien kind of went down under a challenge from MacLeod. And I mean, that was, I didn't see that. I don't know if I didn't see that one, or I just blacked out for a minute, or kind of what happened with that one. But that one seemed to be swept away quite quickly. And obviously no VAR, very little or no VAR check with that one. And with that one again, I think on the commentary, I think I listened to watch the highlights on Quest. They said, "Oh, he's very clever. This is what O'Brien does." And I don't know if clubs get a very similar kind of thing to like American football or basketball. They get time to speak to the officials and say, "Hey, this guy does that," And I wonder whether there's an element of, they'd said, he plants, like, because you see him, he gets the ball and he kind of positions himself and then stops, and then MacLeod kind of goes into the back of him, and their legs tangle again. And for me, that one is more of a penalty than the first one. I would say that penalty is given like 99.9% of the time, whereas the Toffolo one is probably given less because of the theatrics to it.
I would agree with that again from the benefit of having it on the screen at the time. It like you say, it was more a case of he ran into the back of him and the legs kind of like tangled a little bit, which again you can see how that might be billed as just a coming together, but he definitely kicked the back of his thigh, like his back of his calf as he went in. So, but then again, probably yes, there were less theatrics this time around, but the way that they'd conducted himself across the entire game to that point, he probably just thought, none of that, mate, just on your way.
It's the same kind of thing. They both seem like they're similar sized blokes, and I would like to think if somebody ran into the back of me, I wouldn't go down like a sack of shit. Which seemed to be the standard kind of thing. You look at that kind of thing, and it was, again, I'm kind of banging on about it. It seemed to be any little bit of contact, we're down, and make the referee make a decision. Make the referee make a decision. You're like, it's like that old cop movie when it's like, oh, I'm too old for this shit, but he's like got one last mission in him because he's retiring in the summer holiday. This is like his last game before retirement. And it's like, so he kind of seemed to have this attitude of, oh man, I don't want my last match to be punctuated by, he gave away two contentious penalties or a contentious penalty that cost Forest the promotion. On the flip side of that, he's got the other side of it, of he didn't give a penalty that could have put Huddersfield in the Premiership, which is kind of thing. So then, then the only kind of other thing that kind of punctuated it for me was obviously then all of a sudden Brees is injured and going down, and we're bringing on a keeper, and I'm like, whoa, no, the heart can't cope with this part of things. What the hell are we doing, kind of thing. So I think it was first he went down and he's like hobbling about, and then Huddersfield start taking pot shots a little bit. Of course, none of them hit the target because they didn't have a shot on goal all game. Forest can't really talk. We had two. So it shows how kind of cagey it was. And then obviously Horath came on for the last
10 maybe.
10 minutes including injury time. Which then injury time turned into the longest 6 minutes of my life, would have been, kind of thing, with no way of kind of stupidly. Well, luckily the guy in front of us had set a timer, which was about a minute out, which was just like heart attack inducing. But yeah, you kind of think, oh man, I should have set a timer just to kind of count those 6 minutes down. But then would it have been worse as it goes over those 6 minutes? But yeah, 6 minutes. And yeah, that Forest are promoted. I don't know if you want to discuss the ramifications of it, or do you want to take a break before we kind of talk about that?
I mean, yeah, I think there's probably still a lot of meat on the bone here. I've got I mentioned Mr. Williams earlier. I've got a thought-provoking question to ask, which I can ask in the second half. So yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll take a small break and come back for more on the game. So we'll be right back.
Recording in progress.
So obviously we left off there. We just got to the end of the game. Obviously we've been talking about the main discussion points were obviously the two contentious penalties. I'd say for me the main reason why Huddersfield didn't win the game can just be summed up in the fact that if you look at the stats, like Matt said, 5 total shots, none of which were on target. Goalkeeping, saves, Huddersfield 2, Nottingham Forest 0. Literally, at no point did they ever test either Samba or Horvath at any point during the game. Like we said that when the game started, it was a bit cagey for the first half, for the majority of the first half. I'd arguably say that Huddersfield probably started the better of the two. I'd say they had it for the first 10 minutes because Thomas was getting on the ball. He was running at Spence, and he was trying to sort of make things happen down that side. I still to this day don't understand that if they'd have just watched the Sheffield United second leg of the playoffs, surely they'd know attack the left side, because Colback isn't a natural left wing back. So I don't understand why they were putting most of their efforts down Forest's right hand side. All of their attack came down that side. It didn't make any sense to me. So if I was that's where I'd be sort of holding my anger if I was a Huddersfield fan, personally. Why we've gone into a game we haven't had a single shot on target? Why we've not attacked arguably the weakest point of Forest's team?
A lot of the build-up on Sky before the game was around Thomas and around his dead ball prowess. So now putting 2 and 2 together after what we just talked about to like this now, it's like, yeah, he was on the ball quite a lot earlier on, but again, he was another one that I seem to remember, little clip down, right, now I've got a chance to put it into the box. And for all the build-up that he got on Sky, certainly 2 of his deliveries were absolute garbage. So
it was like I say, other than the first sort of 10 minutes and a little bit more in the first half, he was pretty much anonymous, and Forest actually dealt with him really well. So, I mean, I'm not a manager or anything like that, but to me, if he's your main outlet, would you not think to maybe shift him to the opposite flank and try him there? Well, I don't know if he's obviously operating off the left. I don't know if it's because he's cutting in on his right, and then trying to whip the ball in all the time. So if he's obviously, if he doesn't, he just obviously doesn't work off the right flank. Maybe I don't know. It just seemed a bit strange to me.
Not meaning to offend Matt with this, but generally I thought I didn't really think either manager had a plan B come the game, because effectively they obviously Forest managed the game much better having gone 1-0 up, but like he said about having Thomas has been ineffective. They didn't do anything. Huddersfield didn't do anything to change that, and that was clearly the plan. But then, like we've already alluded to once over, Johnson might as well have been sat on the bench and then playing with 10, because he was absolutely missing for all of that.
I'm going to throw in as well, podcast favourite, close your ears, Andy. I think Zinchenko was pretty anonymous as well, kind of thing, and I think that would be the resounding feature of the last. I mean, I didn't see the first of the playoff semi-finals, but the second playoff final, anonymous. He was pretty anonymous in the in the playoff final. He was very, very anonymous against Bournemouth in the game when they could have kind of taken over second place, and yeah.
I think if you look back at the stats, he's not ended the season well. From like the game, certainly the games that I've seen, he's looked very, very poor. Not on it In fact, I'd go so far as to say I don't think he's had a good game since he scored that goal against Blackpool that won me a bit of cash.
Yeah.
And he just strange, but I think like Matt said there, I think like the sort of the big sort of strong suit for Forest in the first half was Keenan Davis dropping short, picking the ball up and just driving them forward. Because other than that, there was a period for about 15 minutes in the second half where Forest literally could not get out of their own half, and every time the ball came to them, they were just panicking and just hoofing it long. But every time they hoofed it long, they perfectly picked out a Huddersfield player, so the ball was just getting recycled straight back at them and stuff like that. And scrappy for at least 15 or 20 minutes. I said to both Matt and Panas that it's not really going to be a game that's going to stick in the memory for the purists for a long time. It wasn't a great game of football to watch. I think both teams were very cagey. Had Forest not got the goal just before half time, I think we were potentially on for a 0-0, because I don't think there wasn't anything sort of like coming certainly from Huddersfield to say that they were threatening, and it wasn't as if the goal for Forest came after a massive period of pressure. It kind of came out of the blue, that goal. It was just a bit of a pot shot from Garner.
I think they
went direct.
Again, obviously I'm going to sound like the biased Forest fan here. I think that came after a concerted period of what, in relation to the game, would be conceived as pressure. I don't think either team had anything like that until Huddersfield 10 minutes from the end of the game when they were chasing. I would say Forest came into the game with a plan to try and win but not lose, whereas Huddersfield came with a game of don't lose. I mean, it seemed very much like, right, lads, just don't lose, don't give anything up, don't give anything, everybody's back. If we can pinch something, like you said, obviously with the set pieces and stuff like that, can we nick something as opposed to going and winning it? And I think it does like with Stu saying that kind of thing, that like Cooper didn't seem to have another plan. We'll probably at some point we're going to have to kind of discuss it. I've got a couple of things that I've got. You're going to have more than one plan for the Premiership.
Yeah, I can tell you that from experience, because it's that first half of the season that Hull were up. They absolutely took. They were third at one point, which is ridiculous, and then they got found out. And then the fact that they did so well in the first half of the season is what kept them up. And then
I was going to say that. That's what saved them in the end, because what was it? Out of the last 19 games, I think they won one, and obviously didn't lose all of them, but it was like 16 or something out of the last 19 that they lost.
It was not fun. But then second season, they ended up suffering. So they I think they've got a lot of work to do. Like it'll feel very much. You've got to enjoy the time now, and obviously the experience, especially you guys just had, but. Just hope that they put in the work, because it starts now. They're going to need to be looking at everything from game plans to signings like the morning after, because it's shit just got real, as they say.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, we can take it. We can take it two kind of ways. We can either look at where do Forest go from now, or if I think we can do this bit now. Obviously, at the start of the season, we discussed about which clubs had it worst in the past however many years. And that kind of like set my stall out, kind of very much that Forest have had the worst of it in the past kind of 20 years kind of thing. And I think Sunday kind of puts all that in the bin in a way kind of thing. I don't think with the season that they've had, and it sounds over dramatic when you say it, but I think I'd kind of given up on football. I wasn't that bothered. Like, we'd kind of start, I was doing the podcast because I like speaking to you guys about football. I like the way you talk about football. I like the bit of fun that we have with it, but I was kind of like, how much am I going to be able to contribute to it? You know, I know I'm cynical, and you know, I kind of, you know, it's a bit of fun and that kind of side of it, but where is it going to go? And like, as the season's gone on, I've kind of got a bit more emotionally attached to the team. I don't like some parts of it, but the kind of side of it that, like, and it's kind of like, so then I went back, because I remember kind of the bit where I started to kind of like give up was the year they went down to League One. Because they got relegated from the Premier League, and I'd kind of dealt with that a couple of times, and you know, kind of thing, and they kind of bumbled along for a couple of years, and it was kind of thingy. But the year they went down to League One was just, it was awful. And then Gary Megson took over, and it was even worse. And it's a vivid memory, but I'm pretty sure I went. I might have gone with my dad. And I'm not sure if they'd even got relegated yet. I mean, maybe I'm mixing up my seasons. They got relegated, and they drew 2 each with Gillingham at home, and it was terrible. Like, there was just, even though they drew 2 each, it was just a dour game. And then Radio Nottingham, I must have gone on the train, because I was listening to Radio Nottingham on a crappy little DAB radio, and they played this bleak montage of like everything that had happened since Clough had left, and it was like talking about David Platt and we knew this day was coming, and you just thought, Jesus Christ, like the first year, you were the first European champions to be relegated to the third tier. This has happened, that's happened. Oh, you know, do you remember Sheffield United in the playoffs finals? That was crap, wasn't it? You know, and it was just this kind of like, woe is me of Forest history. And then we spent 3 seasons in League One, and the following season was this, they came out. The players did, and they've been terrible all season. I think Megson had got sacked halfway through the year, and someone else had taken over, or whatever version of that was. And they came out with T-shirts to say sorry, and sir, or like each player went, thank you and sorry, and you just felt like saying, just burn them, put them in the middle of the pitch and burn them, because I don't care, And I think it was just like really kind of thing. So I think the stats that I got was, we've gone 23 years, which is 8,414 days, which is 1,069 games, before we got back into the Premiership. That's been 31 managerial changes, 20 different permanent managers, and 4 different owners, and a partridge in a pear tree. And it just shows, like, we just became a joke. We became the butt of a joke. And I think that was the thing that stopped me going, stopped me wanting to go. Not supporting them, but just, we were the butt of the joke. We were the first European champions to get relegated to the third tier. Look, here comes Uncle Fawaz with his money, and throwing it around and comparing himself to Brian Clough and all that garbage when he turned up, and and it was just, and the changes of the managers, that another sacking at Nottingham Forest, who they're going to bring in this time, and it was going to be some random person, Steve McLaren for 40 days or however long he lasted, and then Alec McLeish for a week, and Sean O'Driscoll, who did a really good job and then got sacked after he beat Leeds 4-2 or something like that.
I feel like you've skipped over Steve McLaren there by not giving him his full title of ex-Hull City and now Manchester United assistant manager, Steve McLaren.
I mean, he's literally the only manager in Middlesbrough history to win a trophy. Can we not take the good name of Sir Steve McLaren into the vein?
I'm not criticising the job that he did at Forest. It's just he didn't get any time to do anything. It was just like, yeah, he's rubbish, get him out. And it was
he was very much on the down spiral. This came after he'd had the England job. So
was that after he'd been to Holland as well and done his impressions?
I think it was after he'd actually he'd actually built himself back up with the 20.
Yeah.
In Holland. Then I think he went to Germany with Wolfsburg, and that didn't go well, and it's been down and down since then, really.
But yeah, then obviously we had like 18 months, kind of 2016, 2017, where we couldn't sign any players because we'd gone into financial fair play and stuff like that. And I just think it became a bit of a joke because, Fawaz was there. We weren't paying bills. We weren't paying local businesses for like things with the team, and it's been a big change around like in the club in the past 4 years. And there's still been mistakes, managers being sacked at the drop of a hat and stuff like that. But I think like there's been a lot of praise for Steve Cooper and the players in the past few days. There's been a lot of praise for the chairman because they always praise the chairman. But I think the three people that I kind of particularly wanted to shout out, and one of them's kind of thingy. So Dane Murphy, who's the CEO of the club, who we got from Barnsley, and he's brought a very money ball kind of attitude into it. So he's and that'll filter onto what's for the future for Forest. Second one is Gary Brazil, who's the director of football development, who basically is the academy guy, and he stepped into Forest a couple of times and done a really good job. But the Worrells, the Yateses, the Johnsons, who've all come through into the team, Mighton, they've all come through the academy that he's built over the past kind of 10 years or so. And then the last one is it's a bit thingy. It's Nigel Dougherty, the former owner, who sadly passed away kind of 10 years ago now. And he saved the club in '99 because they were going to go into administration. And then when he passed away in 2012, in his will, Forest were written into his will that money would still be given to Forest to keep them afloat until the point that they're sold. And it's realistic that without him, they were shipping £100,000 a week when he took over. There wouldn't be a football club, and in a way, it's nice that finally Forest, the training ground's named after him, and it's nice that they've got up there. But yeah, the future. I think Mr. Cook has a question.
I've got a question. It might not be. I don't know what you'd call it. I was going to say politically correct, but I don't think that's right. We haven't actually fully gone through the score. I think we've sort of pieced it together. So my question is, moving up a league off the back of an own goal, how comfortable are we feeling on that one? So what I mean is, would it have been preferred if it had gone 0-0 like complete full time and had to go to penalties, and Forest won on penalties? Would it have been better that Forest had scored 2 absolute pearler goals and that would have been okay? Or is it a win's effing win?
I mean, the first scenario where it would have gone extra time and penalties, Paul would have had to peel me off the ground and carry me back down Wembley Way back to the car, because I would have had nothing left. It was exhausting. Like,
to say it was bad enough at the fact that they'd won the game, I honestly dread to think what would have had to do to get you back had they not have won.
I don't know how Panas did it. Panas did not seem to have a care in the world. And I just went through it the whole game, and it was just.
He's always got Sheffield United to fall back on, hasn't he? So,
oh no! God, don't suggest that to him. God, I suppose so. Obviously, the three of us have now had the experience of seeing our team in the playoff final at Wembley. I obviously haven't had the same experience as you two have, and from the other side, I never had the chance to sort of, apart from the first 14 minutes or whatever when it was still 0-0. But because Borough were 2-0 down so early in the game, I don't think I ever allowed myself to actually get to that point where it was like, oh, this could actually happen. Obviously, you have the stuff that build up to the game and stuff like that. It's like, it's always going to be, oh yeah, they'll win this. They're going up, blah blah blah. But obviously, until the game actually kicks off, it's like a hypothetical situation. And then obviously you go into the mode of the game kicks off, and then you're in the sort of the 90-minute, 120-minute, whatever it is zone where it is what it's going to be, and you just sort of roll with the punches. Obviously, I text some of the guys that I actually went to the Borough game with and just said after 20 minutes, well, Forest have done better than Borough already did. So, but obviously, notorious, lead-lined, fancy new stadium, my signal did not work. So, even though the stadium is sponsored by a mobile phone company, it was not my mobile phone company, so I had very little signal.
I can't imagine that's done deliberately.
Oh no, definitely.
That's definitely not an advertising campaign.
Everyone else's signals to that. But yeah, I was there as a sort of a neutral, but I was obviously there as a Forest supporter for the day. But yeah, I don't know. If they hadn't have won, I dread to think what the sort of atmosphere coming out of the stadium would have been.
Well, I hadn't told my dad that we were going, so my dad sent me a text message on the 28th of May, so whenever that is. I want Forest to win, as always, but I don't do live football very well anymore. Perhaps that'll change. Perhaps that'll change when we're losing every week in the Premier League. So that was what he'd sent me a day or so before. So then I sent him pictures of us in the stadium. Are you there? How did you get a ticket? You're very brave. I only put my phone on to check something. Switching off again now until the game's over. Next message, 23 minutes past 6. So what, 10 minutes from the end? How are you coping with this? I've lost the BBC. Have they won? And this is obviously, my phone had run out of battery at this point, so I couldn't even reply to him. And then finally, you Reds, glad you were there to see it. So that's my dad going through the ringer and not even watching it, just kind of either listening to it.
That thread is literally the full gamut of emotions. All it was missing was some sort of fucking Forest or something like that. Some sort of typical, useless bastards, blah, blah, blah.
Deep breaths and heavy breathing. It was just like...
but yeah, obviously...
Going through that again, it's just...
Speaking as a neutral, Andy, I think I could safely say for everybody, if your team gets promoted and it comes off someone's bollocks, you don't care.
Okay, that's that. It's been a burning question since the game finished, and I've been like, do I text and go, so how are we feeling about this, or do I keep it for the podcast as actual content? So I've just been sitting on my hands this entire time going, I need to know. Is it?
Could have run onto the pitch and it hit the dog and gone in, and everyone could have had an absolute shit fit about it, and it still would have been fine. Like I said, 23 years, 8,414 days, and 1,069 games, including 4 playoffs.
And as he said, a stint in League One.
5 playoffs, I think. Yeah, 5. Yeah, it didn't matter how it went in. And to be fair, the fact that it looked like it went in off Yates kind of made it a little bit kind of thing. If it would have been, it perhaps would have been a little bit more galling if it would have been like the poor lad sat on the ball and it flirted out from underneath him and went in. Then yeah, you'd perhaps be a little bit thinking, but no, just the fact that they won is fine.
I'd go so far as even to say, even if it had hit the guy in the face and broken his nose and caused some sort of massive injury, still wouldn't care at this point. And as well, just a little note on like Paul mentioned, we've all kind of been through it now. When I was there at the 2008 playoff final, it was billed as the biggest game in world football at the time due to the value of it. And I always remember it being touted as like 100 million quid. Well, this just shows you the price of inflation now, because they were touting last weekend's game at 170 million quid. So it's gone up just a little bit. Or half of it, killing Mbappe or whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah, we actually covered this when we were actually walking to the ground. I don't know how long it's been the case, but it's almost been like a gentlemanly agreement between the two clubs that whichever team goes up doesn't take a cut of the gate receipts for the game. So all the gate receipts will have gone to Huddersfield, because obviously Forest don't need the money because they've just basically pocketed 180 million or whatever it is for going up. Obviously, you have to take the small portion of the fee that they have to give Borough for Jed. So that'll come off the fee. That'll come off the amount that they've been given. And then obviously you have to factor in the fact that they're probably now going to want to buy Jed. So that's got to be, he's got to be worth at least 65 million, I mean. Let's be honest. I mean.
There's also as well, don't forget the fact that Zinkernagel's parent club got relegated from the division he's just won promotion to. So there's definitely going to be some exchanging going on there, you'd have thought.
Well, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were saying how awful would it be that, like, basically Watford just, like, cast him aside after they got promoted and was like, right, off you pop, go to Forest kind of thing. We don't want to pay you for a season. And then now they're back in the Championship. They'll go, you did all right in the Championship last year. Actually, we're going to keep you. So that was the kind of last thing that I thought about, was obviously kind of like I said, Dane Murphy, the CEO, has kind of got this money ball attitude to it, and they want to buy players that they can either sell on for a profit or is going to be a proper asset to the club. Well, we got 5 players that were loanees this year that all kind of contributed kind of thing. So we've got Garner from Man United, Zinkernagel from Watford, Max Lowe from Sheffield United, Jed Spence from Middlesbrough, and Keenan Davis from Aston Villa. And then obviously all the other players that we've got in the team that you would question whether they can make the step up. You know, podcast favourite. You know, I doubt we'll be able to pick him next year as our 60 goal a season striker, because maybe old Lewis Grabban is exactly that now. He's old. But yeah, you know, how many of those loanees come back? Maybe. You know, I think that, you know, as someone said, if someone goes to Jed Spence and offers him, you know, Forest offer him 40 million a week, but then the Spuds offer him 60 million a week. You don't know, do you? It's Premier League price, isn't it? You've got it.
I hope no one's paying anyone 40 million a week.
Oh, sorry, 40,000 a week. Sorry, all that money had gone to my head. Like, it's Kylian Mbappe's going, well, hang on a minute, I need to pay myself a little bit more now. I'm running a club here, and I'm playing, and I'm coaching.
Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Like, if he gets pissed off, he'll just put himself on the transfer list, so it's fine.
But yeah, so like, yeah, someone had said if Forest offer him 40 grand a week or however much, will they be able to match it? You know, I would hope that they wouldn't, because I think putting yourself into financial bother like that, you know. But then people are saying they probably need 10 players through the door, and you know, Paul will have said they look like a really tight group of players, kind of thing. The way they celebrated and stuff like that, they seem like, you know, even like useless players like Bong was on there celebrating, and you know, you can't think you can get out, mate. You're terrible.
I couldn't take my eyes off him. He was all over the celebration.
He was loving life. Him and Cafu.
Cafu was front and centre.
I'm going to throw, that last time, because he's been great all season and he's got us all points, but I am going to throw Johnson under the bus for that game one more time. Do not go missing in a game to the extent that you did, and then be the only guy front and centre on the balcony receiving the trophy, fucking videoing yourself, you absolute knob. It's going to be on telly. You're going to be able to get a video of all of this. What are you even doing? Just enjoy the moment. Stop watching it through your fucking phone.
It's for the
I was
gram,
so
innit?
mad
It's for the
about that.
gram. You got to get the followers for the gram.
Obviously, Jed's been giving it big
Play a bit of football and you'll get
as well.
Jed hasn't been enamouring himself to the Borough faithful by tweeting out within minutes of the game finishing. Oh, where are my manners? Welcome to Twitter at Real Warnock.
Whilst smoking a massive cigar and in his flip flops in the dressing room at Wembley, it was a nice touch. But yeah, I mean, I think realistically, possibly 3 of those 5 will be back. Well, I think realistically 2 might be back. I think we might have a battle on our hands to get Spence back.
I don't know, because I think he has come out and said that he would like to stay, but he knows that it's not in his hands. I think that United will be tempted to send Garner back, because you'd imagine if they want to get him Premier League experience, why not send him to a place where he's comfortable in the team, rather than just packing him off to like Burton. Well, I was going to say Burnley. They're not even a Premier League team. Like Brighton or someone for a season where he doesn't know like whether he's going to fit in with the style of play.
They'll recall him at Christmas though, when they're both battling it out for 16th.
Well, yeah. I was going to say, you never know. United might be, battling against relegation. So,
should we maybe get the formalities out of the way at this point, Andy?
For the book purposes, would anyone like to guess who the only person who didn't get any points in this game was? Yes,
excellent.
Yes, it was.
I got all the points.
Matthew Moore.
In real life.
Matthew Moore offset his team going up by getting 0 points in this game. As it was, the rest of us just got 1 point each because everybody, apart from Matt, put Forest down to win. No surprises. Nobody got the goal scorer. Even from a predicting Huddersfield goal scorer, nobody got the goal scorer. So just a point apiece there. So where to, Mr. Williams?
well, there are England games, so we can cover the England games if we want to open us back up for a return podcast next week that potentially would be the last of the season. Other than there's other games actually the week after that, so virtually 2 weeks' time. It's the season that never ends. We could cover a little bit of news, but we might have to take a small break before we start with said news.
Yeah, I was looking at that time ticking away there, thinking, let's have another break, freshen up, splash a little water on our faces, and get back in the thick of it. So, we'll be right back in a moment. Don't go changing. 2 secs.
Recording in progress.
Apparently there was a wardrobe change at, it's not even half time, it's third time, whatever.
We've adopted the ice hockey principle. Rather than 2 halves, we've gone for 3 periods in this particular podcast. So we're entering the 3rd and final period.
You've committed yourself.
So we've covered the important stuff. We'll do a little bit of news, and then we'll, as we alluded to earlier, there is actually some football still to go. England have got 4 fixtures over the coming 2 weeks or so, playing 4 fixtures in the Nations League. So we'll cover those, give some predictions for that, and then we'll see how we get on. But from a news perspective, obviously there wasn't just the Championship playoff final taking place this weekend. It was almost a bit of a double celebration for Mr. Moore, as by no means his other team, but a team that is close to his heart, I dare say, was involved in the League 2 playoff final the day before.
Oh, I thought you meant because Liverpool lost the Champions League final.
We'll get to that. Don't worry about that.
On the list.
Yeah, so the day before was the League 2 playoff final, I apologise. And I believe Port Vale beat Mansfield. Was it 3-0 in the end? I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it was 3-0. I know they were 2-0 up at one point.
Yeah, as far as playoff final go, it was a bit of a rout.
It was 3-0. Yeah, Mansfield 0, Port Vale 3. So Port Vale have got themselves promoted to League One.
Yeah, I think there's something with that one. Is it Benning who got the third goal? Is South Asian of like South Asian heritage, so it's kind of like something to kind of highlight. I think kind of thing like promoting kind of like the diversity in football kind of thing. It's kind of quite the like that South Asian, Indian, Pakistani kind of group are not like represented that highly in football, and I think he'd made a big deal. Yeah, like someone had pointed it out, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely trying to raise that kind of profile in football because we're not a massively represented group across the board, really." So yeah, chuff for the Vale because they made at the point I think they were in the playoffs in the season that COVID started, so 2019, 2020. And I think the owners, the Shanahans of who own the Vale, were very much behind stopping the season, but ultimately led to the Vale dropping out of the playoffs, which was for people who know about the Vale, but they've been through a difficult kind of few years, kind of thing with again financial issues and stuff like that. Yeah, so chuff for the Vale, chuff that they've gone up because they're a well-run club by good people apparently. So yeah, and is it Darryl, their manager, has had a absolutely horrific time as well, as kind of thing with his daughter dying earlier on in the season, and yeah, it's kind of really kind of he's a ex-Mansfield player managing the Vale, so I think they stood up and cheered him. Was it in the 8th minute or something like that?
He's actually an ex-Hartlepool United player as well. He had a long stint at Hartlepool after he left Mansfield earlier in his career. But I was just looking at there, and I know that he'd had like a family situation earlier in the season. I didn't realise that it was his daughter had passed away. But yeah, just fair play to him for being able to carry on, really, because that's horrific, and obviously no parent should have to sort of go through that, really. But just a lovely end to what must have been an absolutely horrific season for him. Outside of the League 2 playoff final, we also had the Champions League final, as alluded to by Mr. Woodmansey just there, which took place in Paris, and by all accounts was a bit of an absolute shitstorm.
I mean, apart from the football bit, that bit was fine. The commentary team on that were absolutely ridiculous. So, Paul was probably about to say, I'm sorry for cutting you off there, but about all the trouble outside. Apparently, reports of people getting tear gassed because they were apparently late to the venue. But from my understanding, they were late to the venue because of just how generally shit French traffic is anyway. So yeah, you're a bit late. Oh, what's that? Oh, I have a tear gas bomb. Off you go, fellas. But the commentary thing that I was getting to, it's all right now because everybody's made it inside. Have they? No, this was 10 minutes into the game when people were still coming in with with issues, shall we say? But the football bit was fine as far as my perspective sits. I was very happy with it.
I think the thing for me is like kind of we've talked about in the past, like with Hillsborough and stuff like that. It's a difficult fan base for that incident to happen to be penned in those kind of cages and things where there's only one route out and you're getting kind of thing. It must have been really scary for some of those people who were at Hillsborough, who were possibly in that kind of situation again, possibly with sons, daughters, grandkids kind of thing. And it's then this shitty kind of blaming of people and pointing fingers and stuff like that, and it's just, the politics of that side of things is disgraceful, really.
Well, hadn't one of the French ministers come out and essentially blamed the Liverpool fans for it when it was just the granted, they didn't know that the chat. I actually had this chat with Sarah. She was like, surely they know that this is happening at this time and on this date. And I was like, well, they have had it moved at short notice because it was supposed to be in Russia. She was like, well, when did they find out about it? Last week. I was like, no, good few months ago now. Well, at least when the war started, maybe. And I don't think they could have got it that. I mean, thankfully, they didn't get it so wrong that there was no fatalities. But like you said, Matt, then it's like, of all the fan groups for it to happen to, like, nah.
Well, again, it's not like that stadium doesn't run major sporting events on a regular basis. It is the basis for the French rugby team to play their games. It is the basis for the French national team to play the majority of their games. Oh, and who else plays there? PSG plays there on a regular, is that not the PSG stadium?
It is now that Mbappe's in charge.
Yeah. So obviously it's in Saint-Denis, which is, I'm assuming, a suburb of Paris. It's actually so it's not actually in the city centre. It's actually a little bit further out, and I think that Thierry Henry actually has been sort of saying on previous TV shows and things like that people need to realise that the game's not in Paris, it's in Saint-Denis, and that Saint-Denis is not not nice. Apparently, it's got a bit of a reputation as being a bit.
It's like saying the game's in Manchester when actually it's in Moss Side or something like
Stockport
that.
or something like that, basically. But yeah, it does sound like it was terribly organised and just. What was it? Was it delayed by 40 minutes or 45 minutes, something like that? It didn't.
45 minutes in the end, wasn't it? Because was it supposed to be a 8:15 kick-off?
Right.
It didn't kick off till past. But the latest thing that's I've just had a quick flick because I know that it was being updated throughout the course of the day. But the latest thing from Sky Sports says that the Liverpool CEO Billy Hogan says he's been horrified by accounts from fans after receiving more than 5,000 pieces of feedback about the issues surrounding the final. But I knew that, like I said, the officials in France had blamed the Liverpool fans, but they didn't realise that UEFA had got in saying that they were blaming thousands of fans with fake tickets. Well,
they're going to point fingers. I mean, they're all about as corrupt as each other, and they're just going to try and set about blaming fans. And I think it's an easy kind of thing to do, is to point at fans. And unfortunately, I don't want to dredge things up, but Liverpool's history in Europe, which is ridiculous because it's 40 years ago now, makes them an easy target. But I think people point fingers at and I think unfortunately as well, and we'll see how it goes with the League of Nations League kind of thing. The unfortunate thing is that when England fans go abroad, they don't always know how to behave, and unfortunately, if it's an English club involved, they'll get tarnished with that brush of the minority of idiots who turn up and cause trouble, and that hasn't happened here, because I think what other people were saying was, if you go and look at Spanish Twitter and Real Madrid things, they also said it was absolute shit show to getting into the ground, and it was just as bad on their end, not being tear gassed and not being herded into the thing, but again, it was terribly organised. And then on top of that, isn't it, Rangers and Seville have also put in complaints about the way that their final was run as well. So it's not once is a mistake, twice it's a trend, and it's not the first time it's happened, and hopefully this will be the last, but I can't imagine it, because they're the second most corrupt institution in football.
Sadly, that does definitely seem to be the case. Like I say, it might unfortunately be a case where it has to get slightly worse before it gets better. But yeah, I think that there is obviously that thought that at times it's just easier for them to say, well, English teams were involved. It happens time and time again. I mean, we say this, but it's not as if Turkish clubs, for example, have never sort of caused problems like in Europe, or like certain Spanish clubs, Italian clubs have caused problems in Europe before. It's not just linked to England, but obviously the narrative is English drunk English louts abroad, terrible. And as long as that's the narrative, then I think we're almost fighting a bit of a losing battle there. That's all I really had for news.
Chelsea,
Actually,
Chelsea
no, it isn't. Obviously, we've covered in passing the goings on at everyone's favourite National League club in Ryan Reynolds' Wrexham, and sadly their season has come to an end in what could only be described as incredible circumstances, where on Saturday they were playing in what is basically the semi-finals of the National League playoffs. They were at home to Grimsby and managed to succumb 4-5 after extra time, with Grimsby for the second game in succession scoring a 119th minute winning goal. Yeah, just absolutely crazy that you can get a game that finishes that with that high a score. But crazy. They go on to face Solihull Moors in the final next week to see who gets the final place in the Football League for next season. So it'll either be Grimsby or Solihull Moors.
No relation.
Very much. Sorry, Stu, I sort of jumped in there before you had a chance to say.
The only other thing, weirdly, let's say from a Hull perspective, was the completion of the takeover at Chelsea. Bit of a tenuous link, I hear you ask, but we're after that Nathan Baxter that we had on loan last season on a permanent. So the fact that that's now been sorted out kind of opens the pathway to hopefully get that signing across the line now. So, I mean, Abramovich again hasn't done so bad in his time there, really, has he? Apart from the fact that that he's linked to it. Well,
I was going to say the Sky Sports coverage of it is borderline grotesque.
Yeah.
Because they had a little tribute to him and everything that they'd won in the 19 years that he'd been there, and you're like, can everybody remember why he's selling the club, please? Because of his links to, I mean, a murderous scumbag. Is that going in a bit heavy, maybe?
Don't be drinking any coffee that randomly turns up at your house this week, Matt.
Be making my own. But yeah, I found that quite gross, to be fair, the fact that they sat there and celebrated everything that they'd won and stuff like that. And you kind of think, it's not like he's leaving the game because he's decided that he wants to sell up. He's been forced to sell up because they'd seized all his assets and he was desperate to kind of scrounge a bit of cash out of it somehow. And then obviously, because they've frozen his assets and managed to delay the sale of the club before all this, he's now kind of not got any of that money. It's sat in a bank account, hopefully going to the charities that he's promised. But I won't hold my breath.
Well, apparently, in that time, they've spent £2 billion on transfers. Yeah. So it said the caption I saw was the Abramovich years: £2 billion spent, 15 managers, and 21 trophies. And that's again just a glorification of that. Just conveniently forgetting the other bit. But yeah, so I wasn't so bothered about that side of it. Mainly, it was more the link to the fact that we might actually get a keeper that doesn't piss off the Luton at the drop of a hat. So.
Can I interest you gentlemen in predicting some English football?
Do we have to go to Europe and get really, really drunk, as was alluded to earlier?
We don't have to, but we could.
It's not in our contracts, but also, likewise, nothing's stopping us because it's not in our contracts. I'll grab my passport.
I'll get a passport then. And mine ran out during the first lockdown, and I just never renewed it because why would I need to?
TikTok though, you need to get it done soon.
Well, yeah.
With next year in mind.
Don't worry, it's all under control.
Why do I not believe you?
Cheeky bastard. Anyway, back to the matter at hand.
Paul's forgetting that he needed to apply for it about 3 weeks ago to have it in any kind of time before the next 12 months. And by the way, they won't have that time back on anymore either. Anyway, like you said, moving on.
As previously mentioned, we have a series of England games coming up. 2 of which are before our next recording, so we thought we might actually predict English football. First of the 2 games is Hungary versus England. There's no restrictions on who could go first or last, so I'm going to go in a clockwise kind of motion, starting from my left. Stuart Woodmansey, you're first up.
Okay, so I have gone for Hungary 1, England 1. And I've gone for Nagy. Not because there's 2 of them in the side, so that doubles my chances, because I'm going to have to specify before anybody says. So stick me down for A, Nagy. Not saying I've had a lot of stick recently, so it's just go from there. But and why not stick him down for a goal on his England debut in form, former Hull City, current West Ham player Jared Bowen.
Okay. This is where we get to play the game of did I actually manage to get anybody who plays for England currently and that are likely to play in either of these games. Let's find out, shall we? I just went all in on this game. 2-0 to England. Kane and Sterling.
Is it bad that I wanted to say Zinkenagel and Johnson there?
I nearly thought about it, but I saw nodding there, so I believe that means I have in fact picked English players. Next on my hit list is Mr. Paul the Boss Williams. What have you got for us?
Boss, interesting. I have also gone for England to win the game 2-0. I have also gone for Harry Kane. And I've also gone for Jared Bowen.
Oh, there we go. Look at that. Matthew, you are last on the list.
I've also gone for an England win, but 2-1.
Okay.
Kane and Sterling. And Salai. Szalai.
Lovely stuff. That is that game predicted. That brings us to something that I thought was going to be like, ooh, and then I was reliably informed, not so much, ooh. Germany versus England. As we went in one direction, let's double back and go the other way. So, Matt, you're up first this time.
I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
Okay.
I've got Harry Kane scoring another one because he's a selfish, greedy goal hugger. Story. Say that. And Gnabry, Gnabry.
Okay, that makes you next, Paul.
Yes, I have also gone for a 1-1 draw. But I'll go for Gundogan or Gundogan for Germany. And I will have Sterling for England, please.
I've gone somewhere in the middle. 1-0 to England with Kane to score. And Stu.
You can stick me down for a Desmond. I've gone 2-2.
Really?
So for Germany, I've gone for Muller and Havertz. And then for England, because I didn't pick him last time, and he very rarely goes 2 England games without scoring, I've gone for Harry Kane. And because he's kind of on home turf, maybe, I've gone for Jude Bellingham for the next one. This is where I found out that they're playing the game in a neutral venue and has no bearing of where he plays his club football, but you know what I mean.
There we go. That is the 2 England games that we are faced with this week, fully predicted. Paul, anything left? Anything to sweep up at the end?
I think so. Nothing. I've just seen it flash up on the TV, but it will be the Scotland versus Ukraine delayed World Cup qualifier tomorrow evening. Yes, tomorrow evening, 7:45. And then the winner of that, I believe it's on Sunday. Yes. So Scotland versus Ukraine in a straight one-off knockout game tomorrow evening. The winner of that will then go on to play Wales in Cardiff on Sunday. The winner of that game will go to the World Cup.
Nice. There we go. A bumper episode. An absolute banger of an episode right there. Weirdly, with only one game to discuss, I think everybody was like, yeah, we'll knock this out in a quick 40 minutes. It wasn't to be. It was a bumper episode to finish the regular season, I suppose. Luckily, we can keep this party going for another couple of weeks with England games. So look out for more news, reviews, and all of that wonderful stuff. Congratulations to Matthew Moore and his team for going up. We'll have to assess what next season's podcast will look like. You know,
booted off the podcast. Get promoted. Booted off the podcast. None of that Premiership nonsense here.
Whether we send his marching orders is largely up to you, the listener and viewer. Him the up there in the
comment below.
Yeah.
In or out.
Yeah.
Matt will have his misery cast. I'll go and sit on my own and talk about football on my toddler. Well, how you feel about the 10-0 loss this week, Matthew? Well, come to be expected from Man City with Erling Haaland signing for them.
You'll have an instant name for the podcast though, because you could just call it the 12 Points Podcast. Once it gets to that point, job done. That's it.
There we go. The first couple of weeks will just be the March to 12.
Countdown.
There we go. Look out for Matt's new one-man show coming to a podcast network near you. Hopefully, the Cookie Cast network. But you never know. He might jump jump podcast networks as well as leagues. We shall find out.
You can only presume that the title will be something like "You can only see the forest, not the tees," or something like that, just to sort of like really hammer home the fact that Forest infinitely better than Borough. Nothing against Hull. It's just based on the fact that when we first floated that name out there, Matt was not happy. He felt it was a diss.
Well, who's got the last laugh now, Paul? Is that
Exactly.
Look at it this way. If Matt does jump ship on the podcast, you've already got next season's name sorted. It's the tiger that came for teas.
Oh, I feel like I should just quit by now, and so you can take it. We'll just do.
My God!
I thank you.
We'll just do the Forest one as the second one. I think that we should do that instead. We'll just do the.
It's a gift. Right, there we go. On that
one, and we've got Premier League with the tricky trees. It's fine.
There we go. Doubling down on football podcasts. Look out for double the flavour of football podcasts coming next season. But until then, or even next week when we talk English football, it's my job to thank these wonderful gentlemen for taking us through a season, let alone a bumper edition of the podcast. And we will check back next week for more countrywide football, let's say. Thank you, gentlemen, and I'll see you all next week. So there you go, what do you think to that? Congratulations to Matt and Nottingham Forest for securing victory and going up. Whilst I've got you, before I let you go, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Drop any reviews that you feel are necessary. And you can also check out our website, thecookiecast.com. We've got social media links and email button, and you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. It's not quite it for the end of the football podcast for now, but it is the end of this podcast. So until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.